Welcome on board the Rich Planet Starship, broadcasting from somewhere high above the Earth. I'm Richard D. Hall. On today's show, I will be featuring an interview recorded in March 2011 with another alleged mind control victim, James Casbolt. But before that, have you filled in your census form? Are you feeling a tiny bit guilty because you haven't completed it yet? Well, one person who hasn't filled in his census form is Ben Emlyn Jones. We caught up with him in Lytham St Anne's to witness his protest and his uncanny management of the government's questionnaire. So what's the reason why you're doing this, Ben?
Because the census is an act of Big Brother imposition on the people of this country. They say you've got to answer these questions and they threaten you if you don't, if you say no. I mean, and they threaten you with a £1,000 fine, and it's all run by an American arms contractor called Lockheed Martin.
Really?
And they're awful. Okay. Hospital Porters Pride and Dignity, stop the New World Order. Welcome to Panwo TV. I'm at the Probe Conference at St Anne's in Lancashire, and you're about to witness a ceremony of desecration. Bring forth the defiler. Is this the defiler? The sentence of this court.
Let's get rid of it.
As that you be burned at the stake until you are dead.
Yay! Yay!
Burn! 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 Oh, come on.
The scourge.
Burn! Burn!
We're not gonna have a look.
Hang on.
Right.
Funny I was a
I'm gonna
smoker.
turn it so it's over.
Yeah. Sorry about the delay, ladies and gentlemen.
What's it going?
Yes,
There we
that's
are.
it, Captain.
There we are.
Burn! 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 Burn!
Burn!
This one's going to go viral.
Yay! Back to hell.
Where you belong. Return these ashes to the census office. This is not my form, this is our Stain and Chris's form. We're going to return them to the census form. Yeah.
What, you're going to return it as ashes?
We are. When these ashes are cooled down, we've saved the envelope, we're going to put them in and we're going to send them back.
With a nice message.
What do you say to people who think that you're just a bit mad for doing this, Ben? What's your answer to that?
I think you're mad actually if you feel this. If people are coming to you and asking you questions, for no other reason than they want to ask you questions, and if you provide false information, they tell you you're providing false information when they are the ones asking you the questions. I think that's crazy, because you can say to them, well, if you think you know better and you think you know more about my life than I do, then why don't you fill the form in for me? So I mean, the whole thing about it is mad. It's all crazy. Well, we just told them we had a little accident. We were trying to light our cigarette and the census form caught light. Oh, ow, ow, ow. Ow. We were a bit cold.
It's a senseless form now.
The senseless form, yeah.
Do they not need this information in order to set policies and stuff like that, Ben?
Well, the thing is, though, whenever they want to set policies and stuff, they just do other surveys, which leads me to suspect there's another reason for this intense form, which they're not telling us.
Right.
Especially when people like Lockheed Martin are involved. I mean, the government say, well, your data is safe with us. However, they've left submarine blueprints in laptops in cars, and they left social security details down the backs of chairs in trains.
Mm-hmm.
What we're going to do with these ashes now, are they cool enough? Any ashes that we can revive, we have the envelope, we're just going to return these ashes to the people they came from.
Not much left of it now.
There's enough, yeah, there's barely an envelope full, but I think there's enough to sort of like be going on with. There's enough to sort of satisfy the census people, I think. You know, we are actually returning a form in
a slightly different state.
Slightly more carbon and oxygen probably than it arrived in, but now we're going to. I'm not going to lick the envelope because they can take your DNA from that. I'll just fold
I think they'll be able to find who you are, Ben.
Well,
you're going to put it on your channel, aren't you?
Well, but I mean, the thing about this, ladies and gentlemen, Sue, let me speak to people. Let me speak to the people.
Get him on here.
They
I'll stand here as well.
can't prosecute you. They say they can prosecute you, but they're not. There's last time over 1 million defaulters, and there were 38 prosecutions. I'd be very surprised if there will be a single prosecution this time, because it'll be like the poll tax 20 years ago. You know, they're all full of bravado. We can send you to jail, we can threaten you with Greek buggery and all this sort of thing. And when it actually comes to it, they can't prosecute people. There's a backlog of poll tax defaulters that's going to go back 150 years. And this is going to be the same again, because more people are defaulting this time. Janet Street Porter, this woman who writes in the Daily Mail, which is hardly a revolutionary journal, has said she's advocating breaking the law and not filling out your census form. Millions of people are going to default. The jails are full, the courts are full. Don't be scared. Don't let them frighten you. Okay? So we're now going to return this to whence it came. Thank you for watching Panwo TV. Hospital Porters presidency stopped the New World Order.
Right, last night we witnessed the satanic ritual of Ben burning his census form, and we've just found this poster, which is reminding you it's time to fill it in, Ben.
Oh, fill it in. Fire is wasted on witches, you know. It's best for the census form, but this is unbelievable. Just listen to this. Complete your census online or drop it in the post today to avoid a fine. Well, as we've already discussed, it's very unlikely anyone will get prosecuted for defaulting on their census at all. However, just look at this. Listen to this. Help tomorrow take shape. Oh my goodness. Has anyone got a sick bag?
Okay. Thanks for that, Ben.
All right, that's enough of seen publications for one day,
all
right.
Richard? Ben Emlyn Jones there, and you can read Ben's blog, The Hospital Porters Against the New World Order, at hapanwo.blogspot.com. And there's a nice picture of Ben in his hospital porter's uniform. Moving on, and from that light-hearted piece to a dark subject, that of military mind control programs. For those not up to speed on the claims of mind control, here's a very brief summary. The claims are that certain sections of military and/or intelligence agencies in the US, UK, Canada, and possibly other countries take very young children or babies, perhaps of specific bloodlines, and from before they can speak, subject them to trauma in order to fracture the mind and create what are called alters, or multiple personalities. These children, once grown up, can then be used for a range of military, espionage or propaganda purposes by those who control them. Control is allegedly achieved using hypnosis, drugs and psychotronic devices, which are technology implanted inside the programmee's body. A few weeks ago I featured the testimony of Alistair and Dave Marrow, which gave an overview of their claims. You can watch this again from the richplanet.net website from the Starship page. The episode is entitled Dave Marrow. This week's guest is another self-claimed mind control victim, James Casbolt, who claims he has been used in Manchurian Candidate-style killings. Other than the testimony, there's little documentation or evidence to support his claims. Before I air the interview, I would like to point out that in my view, there are a range of possible explanations for James's testimony. I will leave it up to you, the viewer, to decide which is most likely. Scenario 1 is that everything stated is factual and actually happened. Scenario 2 is that James was part of a secret mind control program but has not killed anyone nor taken part in military exercises. He could have been programmed to say certain things as a disinformation agent. In other words, he has been put through mind control, but the information he gives is false or misleading. Scenario 3 is that James was part of a secret mind control program, has carried out missions, but for whatever reason, those controlling him have decided to change his remit and use him to spread information or disinformation, i.e. information which is partly true and therefore confuses the subject and causes people to disbelieve the claims entirely. The fourth scenario is that he has not been through any mind control programming and has fabricated the entire story. I'd be interested to know from viewers what their views are after watching this interview. Today I've travelled down to Lytham St Anne's and we've been at the Probe UFO and Paranormal Conference, and in the bar at the hotel where we are staying I happened to bump into James Casbolt. Now, James here is another alleged mind control victim, and we featured 2 mind control victims on the show a few weeks ago. They were Dave Marrow and a chap called Alistair, and James Casbolt was mentioned by Alistair. Now, you're 34 years old, James, so, again, as other mind control victims have claimed, their experience goes back to, well, almost before they were born. So, can you go back to that time and tell me, just tell me as you recall it from being a young child? What are your first memories?
Well, this goes back to 1976 when I was a baby. The name of the project that I was involved in was called Project IBIS, and this was run by the American National Security Agency and MI6. And
does that stand for anything?
IBIS, there's Nazi connections with that.
Right.
It connects to the Egyptian pyramids, Thoth,
right,
and the Giza intelligence group, the Nazi group,
right,
were based under the Giza pyramids. The project was started in 1972 at the Tavistock Institute in London.
Right.
And the project was started there by Dr. Green and some other people. Dr. Green being Joseph Mengele from the Auschwitz concentration camp.
All right. I heard he sort of fled to Argentina, I think. Is that he's the guy who was really interested in twins? And
yeah.
So you claim he was in the UK doing research on mind control victims after?
In 1972, he was in London, yeah, at
right.
Tavistock Institute.
Right, okay. So how have you gleaned that information? Because you weren't born in 72, you were... That's
on file, that's been, there's been various file data passed to me.
Right.
That particular information has been passed to me by the SAS.
Right. Okay, and now are you at liberty to disclose the documentation?
I haven't got the documentation, it's from a database.
Right.
And then it's been passed to me from the database.
So, if you start from, being a baby and then what happened to you, because were you adopted?
I was born into the project. The origins of Project IBIS were at a facility called the Q552 facility, and that was underground in the Rocky Mountains in Canada.
Right.
Now that was underground in a little town called Nelson there in the mountains.
Right.
And the base was above ground and underground.
Right.
There, above ground, it was just like a big, the main section of it was like a big aircraft hangar. And
so how old would you be at this point?
I was a baby.
Right, all right.
And Project IBIS was 42 children.
Right. In Canada?
They were all in Canada at the Q552 facility,
right.
but they were brought there from different countries.
Right.
Women had given birth to them, and they were all brought over to this particular facility, raised there as orphans.
So, for the outside world, this place was just considered as an orphanage then? Is that
no, it wasn't considered. It was just a base in the mountains.
Right. So the public had no knowledge that these children were in this base then?
No.
Right, so it was hidden. So were you being brought up by nannies, or
well, the children were brought over from, some of them were from Canada, America, obviously UK, and I think there was some from South America, all over the place, but it was 42 children who were tracked.
Right.
DNA was tracked.
Right.
Apparently the NSA IBIS file states that the NSA were looking for blood prime.
Right.
They say it's Anunnaki blood.
Right, okay, so you were chosen, or you were possibly even, not chosen, but your parents, your lineage was selected perhaps before you were born.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
they knew that you were going to have this DNA, and then you were brought into that project. That's what you're saying. Okay, so are you saying then that you didn't have a mother and father type situation when you were growing up then, or?
I was raised in the base for 4 years,
Right.
From 1976 to 79.
Okay.
The base was, it was basically a trauma centre.
Right.
They were,
Okay, so I'll just interrupt you again. If I think back to my childhood, I can remember going to nursery when I was 3. So I can remember, you know, having a normal family life. So you were sat with these other 40 children having a meal, or were you always together? I mean,
we were together most of the time. When we were babies, I mean...
so it was like in a dormitory, or what was
well, when we were babies, I mean, the mind records everything photographically. I mean, this isn't a lecture about how the mind works, but just to mention, the mind records everything photographically, especially trauma. So you can remember everything, if you've got the tools to do it back to the time you were born.
Right.
From my deprogramming, it was, when we were babies, we were actually kept in the building above ground in the mountains, and this was like it was basically an aircraft hangar, and they used to keep the doors open, and it was just a series of cots, and it was a trauma centre.
Right. Okay.
So they wanted to keep us cold.
Right.
So they keep the doors open. We were under armed guard 24 hours a day.
Right.
So because there were groups, I've been told, who wanted to rescue us.
Right.
So we were under armed guard 24
Right.
hours a day, so we couldn't be rescued.
So the trauma is there to fracture the mind and create alters, is that?
Yeah, they did. They did a lot of programming with wild animals there, because they used a particular room which they had this. It was like a pen set up, and it was very similar to a Skinner box, which is used in psychiatry.
Right.
Where they, in experiments with the Skinner boxes, they put babies in with animals and things like that, cognitive behaviour tests.
Right.
So what they were doing, they'd put us in this pen with various wild animals, and what they were doing was they were giving us the attributes of various animals, because when we were older, we were used in a lot of all-terrain warfare,
right?
Jungle warfare, Arctic warfare,
right?
In different countries around the world. So
now,
we needed to have animal senses.
All right, all right. Now, some people will find that hard to believe, James. What do you say to people? I mean, I guess it's difficult for you to come out with any tangible proof of what you're saying. I mean, at what point did you come to the UK then? After you
81.
And how old were you in 81?
About 5 or 6.
Right. Yeah. So did you go from this Canadian base? Tell me when you left the base.
Well, what happened? I grew up for the first 4 years, from 76 to 79, in this base.
Right.
Every day we were being trained and conditioned.
Did you ever see the light of day?
Well, when we were in the aircraft hangar section of it, the doors were open, but the place was fenced off. Most of the time it was underground.
Right.
You know, and we were pushed to the limits every day there.
Right.
And some of us were pushed into near-death experiences where we had to be resuscitated.
All right. So so you then came over to the UK, and can you remember arriving in the UK, or do you have any memory of that?
We were rescued from that facility by
Oh,
a Special Forces team.
Right.
In 79.
And which country did the Special Forces team belong to? Was that a Canadian?
No, I think they're American Special Forces.
Right.
And they're connected to Delta Force.
So are you saying that this hangar in Canada wasn't under the control of the government then? Was it as...
Okay, well this is... IBIS is run by the NSA and MI6, but then there's different factions infighting and warring with each other.
Right.
So there was a heavy Nazi presence with the IBIS program.
Okay. You said the NSA are then in cahoots with MI6 and Mossad? Would you,
there was many different organisations involved with the IBIS program.
Right. But you reckon there's some section of government which has then employed the SAS to go in and raid that facility?
It was Delta Force, American Special Forces, not SAS.
Right, okay, sorry. Delta Force. All
Yeah.
right. So why were you then taken to the UK after you were rescued then?
Well, if I just back up a little bit, there was, like I say, it was Delta Force who rescued us, and it's difficult to say exactly what factions were doing it, because you might have 5 different factions within the MI6 or the NSA fighting against each other.
Okay.
So it gets confusing, but there was definitely a heavy Nazi presence in that. We were being indoctrinated with Nazi principles every day there. I mean, these are Germanic principles.
Right.
I mean, even if you look at Germanic organisations in this country, like the Odinist Fellowship,
right.
You know, it was those principles. Like there was a lot of philosophies of physical immortality. Project Ibis was very much about trying to extend life extension, and create like the Uberman, supersoldier. They were trying to, you know, increase the lifespan, and there's other Germanic philosophies there that they believe in endless warfare, and they believe that life on Earth is a how can I say it? Trying to say it as clearly as possible. They believe life on Earth is a means to an end. They're not trying to get somewhere else. They're not trying to get to heaven or another planet. They want to extend their life and live forever here in one body.
All right. So was there any bloodshed when this special forces took over this base? Or
yeah, there was. Well, I'd just like to finish what I was saying quickly before I talk about that, because it's important that these principles. This was how they were indoctrinating us with these Nazi principles, and that's how we could function as assassins when we were older. Right. They were indoctrinating us in the principles that existence is about endless warfare and conflict, and that's how it is. That's how it will always be. And
because their long-term objective was to eventually use you as a mind-controlled assassin or some kind of super soldier for a specific function.
Yeah, and we wouldn't be able to function doing those assassinations unless we were indoctrinated with this.
Right.
So we had to believe that there was life was about endless warfare, and they talked about the 1,000-year Reich, the 1,000 year of peace, whereas there would be 1,000 years of peace, but then war would start and there'd be cycles. So, and then we could function as assassins when we had this mindset.
All right. So do you have any recollection of being rescued from this place?
Yeah, yeah. We were being transported above ground in like SUV vehicles to another base.
I
think this was I think we were being transported to an American base.
Right.
I think it was a base in New Mexico.
Right.
And all I remember was there was a series of SUVs, like a convoy, and I just remember a helicopter coming out. It seems like come out of nowhere and landed, and all these special forces guys jumped off. I remember a shootout, and I remember some of the children being shot by the guards from the Q552 facility.
Right. So then at some point you were transferred to the UK?
Yeah, and then we were taken to a building in Toronto.
Right.
By these special forces, and it was in a building in the city, skyscraper, and we were there for a number of weeks, and we were healed in that particular building.
Right.
Kind of deprogrammed.
Yeah. Okay. Trying to undo the damages what had been done.
We went through operations there in our bodies.
Right.
Because this is another part of the Nazi projects where they were basically creating a cyborg.
So did you feel that they were caring for you at this place in Toronto?
Yeah.
They were looking after you? Sort of.
Well, they did operations on us. They cut us open, and they saw that we had, we had cybernetics in our body.
Right. And you claim to have that still in you now?
Yeah.
Okay. And where is that?
It's everywhere.
Right. So you've got metal in your body?
Yeah.
Right.
Everywhere. Yeah.
All right. So So why did they then send you to the UK?
Because the woman, Kate Casbolt, who raised me part of the time, I don't fully understand her.
Right.
She seems to have a lot of connection with MI6.
She's English?
Yeah.
Right, so you didn't meet her until you came over to the UK?
No, she was in Canada at the time. She was in Toronto.
Right.
I was delivered into her care.
Right, okay.
In
when
the
you were
early
about,
80s.
What, 6 or?
5 or 6,
right,
something like
right.
that. And
so she brought you to the UK?
she brought me to the UK. We were in London. And then it was at this time we were in London, just before we moved to Reading, near the Peasmore base.
Right.
My stepfather had worked right next to the Peasmore base. He was a director of this big aluminium company.
Right.
Aluminium metals. They were supplying a lot of aluminium metals underground to Peasmore and RAF Welford.
Right. Can you name him?
Neil Pettit.
Right.
He worked high mets metals. It's called service metals now.
Right.
There was it was dark what was going on there. There was some kind of child porn and thing going on.
So was this guy partners with, did you say Kate Casbolt?
That was her partner.
Right.
Yeah.
But you took
he raised me for a while.
Right. But you took her name rather than his name?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Right. All right. So, I mean, were they a caring family, or were they putting you through mind control then?
Neil was regularly sexually abusing me.
Right.
And
you think that she was an MI6 agent?
There's definite connections there in MI6. Yeah.
And what about your surrogate father?
My biological father is a different story.
Right. But do you know who your biological father is?
I got a rough idea.
Right.
But when Kate's ex-husband is Peter Casbolt, he was the MI6 agent who died in Doncaster prison in 2003.
Right.
He was officially worked for MI6. I've seen some of his files.
Right. And so you were living with Kate and Peter at some time?
No, they divorced.
Right.
But I spent a lot of time with Peter too.
Right. Okay.
But there was no sexual abuse with Peter. All the sexual abuse was happening with Neil Pettit because he was multi-generational incest himself. His stepfather had spent a lot of time in I think a Japanese concentration camp.
Right.
Gone through various things, and when he came back to England, he started to put Neil through sexual abuse and satanic stuff where animals were being sacrificed and things.
Right. Right. And this allegedly is the same as what's happened with Dave Marrow. I mean, is that purely to traumatize you, or are they getting something from this, some sick thing from this? I mean,
Neil always used to talk about the story when they didn't have enough money. They didn't have much money for food, so his name was Jim, who'd come out the Japanese concentration camp. He'd taken Neil and his sister out to the garden and killed the rabbits in front of them.
Right.
And then they ate the rabbits.
Right. Right.
But it was more of he took them out to show them him killing the rabbits.
Right. Right. Okay. So you think you've been taken to bases in the UK once you were in the custody of Kate? Yeah. So she must have been in on it then, was she, or not? Or
well, I remember being taken to bases.
I mean, I'll just ask you, James, how do you feel about that? I mean, did you feel like a loving relationship as a son to a mother with Kate, or not?
Yeah, there was love there, but it was. I mean, I'm kind of sitting here in front of this camera now. This is going to be made public, obviously. So I feel like I'm kind of protecting her a little bit.
Right. Right, okay. So it's obviously when you're a young child you don't understand what's going on, so you might feel love for that person even though that at the bottom of it they're possibly doing something that they absolutely shouldn't. So, that they're kind of manipulating you, really.
Yeah.
But you're saying you perhaps want to protect her. Maybe she didn't have a choice in it, I don't know.
Yeah, and whatever she's done, she's made up for it.
Right. So do you still see her?
Yeah, I see her.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So you were periodically taken from the age of 6 to British bases then?
Yeah, this. So we get to England, we move to London, and I'm at a place called Chalgrove School in Finchley. And then from there, I'm often picked up after school, taken to these two men, and driven into the Berkshire countryside. This is where the Peasmore base comes out.
Right.
Taken to Peasmore a couple of times there. You know,
and how did you access that?
That was 81, that was.
Right. And how did you access that base? Because it allegedly has no entrances where it is. Well, this evidence comes from Barry King, and there are allegedly other access points. So can you remember how you actually accessed and arrived at
we just drove into a military with high fences in the Berkshire countryside.
Right.
Just drove in. I think we drove through the back entrance, and it looks like Greenham Common from what I've seen on like the internet and things.
Right. And then when you got to the base, you were taken down, or?
Yeah, we were driven down 2-lane road, and just go down for a bit. And there's a car park. There was like those things you get in the car park that go up, you know, like those, and then. Just stopped in the car park, and the first time I remember in '81, we was taken out of the car, and there was a group of about 14 other children. We were all given blankets because it was a bit cold.
Right.
We were huddled in these blankets.
Oh, so where do you were these other children the ones that had been rescued from Canada, or were these other children?
I think they were some of the IBIS children.
Right. All right. And you said that they were giving you these kind of intelligence tests with shapes and things like that. Right.
But the thing is, I always struggle to remember faces in the projects.
Do you think that's because they've put you under mind control and they've blocked it? Or?
Well, they've done. I can remember bodies, and I can remember the way people speak, and I can remember things in minute detail, but faces always seem to be blank, and I think they've purposely done that, so I can't remember faces properly.
Okay. Now, we hear people say that the alleged reason for these projects is to create super soldiers, which is like a multi-functional person who can either assassinate people or, you know, do a whole range of sinister activities with absolute clinical sort of efficiency, if you like, because it's a program that you're following, not necessarily your own human emotions aren't getting in the way, basically, because you've been programmed. So, I mean, do you feel that that's what they then try to make you into? Well,
that's what they were getting rid of, that human factor with the whole Nazi indoctrination.
But was the same type of objective being carried out when you got to England then?
It just carried on. I was genetically enhanced over a period of years, not just my mind, my body.
Right.
And on my records it says I've got over 200 kills.
Right. So it's saying that you've killed 200 people even though that you're not aware of it?
Oh, I remember killing, not 200 people, I remember killing a fair amount of people.
Right. So
as recently as 2007 in South London.
Right. So, but this would be under some kind of mind control, so that you don't blame yourself for those killings then? You blame whoever's programmed.
I mean, I know some of the people I've killed, I know their names.
Right.
I mean, some of them were terrorists, and I don't, no problem with me. No,
right.
You know, I'd do it again if I had to, and I won't lose any sleep over it.
Right. So how conscious were you of, you know, I mean, I interviewed a guy called John Irwin, who claims to have had not the same, but a similar thing in the late 50s, where he was fully conscious of everything that he was doing when he was murdering these people. He was just, it was, you know John Irwin, do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was mainly the close combat techniques that were programmed into him, rather than the actual mission, you know. So, obviously, if you're going to go and kill someone, if you're conscious of it, how come you're not arrested and then banged up?
Because it's state-sanctioned execution.
Right. Okay. And how much are you doing it by your own volition then, and how much is it done because you've been programmed?
Well, it's all the lines are blurred now.
Right.
Whereas in the recent years, you know, I've volunteered for some of it.
Right. So when you
there's been a big war has broken out in the intelligence community, and where I'm having to take the fight to people now, or else I'm not going to survive.
Right. So when you've obviously throughout your teens and childhood, where did you grow up? Like say from the age of 10 upwards, where were you there?
Well, I was being moved around the world, different countries.
All right.
Being trained.
Right. So when you've murdered these people, what was the technique that you've used?
Various things. 2007 was myself and another individual. We travelled. Well, I won't say where we travelled from, but we travelled to an area in South London.
Right.
And we were. I won't say too many details about him because it's not my place to speak for him. The guy that was with me.
So you were both in this mission together then?
Yeah.
Right, as a team sort
of thing,
right?
Twin team, yeah.
Right, so what was the method of execution then?
Well, we waited in our car, MI6 Jeep pulled up, and this guy got out, gave us a briefcase, but before he gave us a briefcase, he gave us the trigger words.
Right.
Which, and it's not just trigger words, he used a combination of hardware to activate implants, but
right.
It's, you know, that state of mind that
they can put you in.
That I'll go into then,
right,
which is I'll be very cold and efficient, and I'll just, all that matters is the target, the mission, that's all that matters, that's all that exists.
But what was the actual method?
Well, he gave us the briefcase, it had a gun, Smith & Wesson. I was often given the same gun. It's a 9mm Smith & Wesson with a pearl handle on it, and it's got a symbol of a black dragon on the handle.
Right.
And I call that gun Drago.
Okay.
And I've used that gun many times.
So it's a shot to the head at close range then?
No, we went to a house and went in the house, tied the guy to a chair, put a pillowcase over his head, and I shot him in the face 7 times.
Right. So would that not be reported in the media? Would that not be picked up? Would local police not then be called? Would that not then, is there no prospect of that then getting out to...
I don't know. I tried to research
so how would
certain
you,
killings, like certain things that happened in Brighton when I was 16, 17 years old.
So you would then be picked up by, I mean, how would you then get away from the murder scene without being caught by the normal police?
Well, you just walk out.
Right.
Just walk out of the house, shut the door, get back in the car, drive to the operatives that gave the briefcase, give them the briefcase back and go home.
Right.
It's not really rocket science.
So after you've done the mission, what's to stop you staying in this state, creating havoc with other people? What happens?
They'll drop you back into more of a, I won't say relaxed state, because when you're in this state where you're doing the killings, you're extremely relaxed. But you go into more of a human state, more of like the state I'm in now is like the family man.
Right. So there's one part I'm still not quite sure on. So the people in Canada were programming you to become some kind of super soldier, but you were then rescued and they took care of you, but it seems then that you've been put into another super soldier program. So how did if you've been rescued, how did you then end up again being into another program?
That's a really good question. There was a fight over the 42 children in the IBIS program, and we were just going from one faction to another, and they were fighting over us. It goes to 1981. After these events happened, we were taken to Greenland Common. My mother took me to Malaysia. There's actually a major NSA facility on the island of Penang in Malaysia. It's a looking glass facility.
Right.
They use advanced alien technology.
Right.
So an important event happened on that island.
Right. So you were flown out there, or how did you get there?
I travelled there with my mum on the plane. With Kate Casbolt, not my biological mother.
Right. For a specific mission then?
Yeah, it was I mean, the SAS were heavy out there on Penang, and there was like I say, there's a looking glass facility there, and they had alien life forms landing on this base, and apparently there's a lot of thick jungle coverage, so it was good to conceal it, and it was almost a quasi-ritual one night in the base, where they had there were seats set up like a triangle formation. They put the children in the seats, and there was what they call Stargate, looking glass technology in the middle.
This was human beings doing this?
Yeah, this was, but looking glass is, I think it's alien technology.
Right, so it's...
But this was an NSA facility.
Right, so it's the NSA who were using children with some alien technology to then do what? This was on October the 31st, which is Halloween, I think. They often use looking glass and open up these stargates on specific ritualistic days. Right.
I mean, I'm not a scientist, I don't know how it all works, but it's something to do with alignments. So, and they always use looking glass. They open these stargates on this particular date, October the 31st, Halloween. And on this particular day, they got the machine spinning. They use some kind of coil and they run mercury through it on the machine, and some beings came through. Beings that I've never heard talked about before. These were wolf-type beings, humanoid wolf-type beings. Almost like a Bigfoot, but smaller, more intelligent looking, and they wear robes. And
a bit like in Egyptian carvings, or?
Yeah, kind of.
So, what was your mission in this particular instance?
This was it was something to do with the pineal gland, third eye. We were all these some kind of beams came out the gate and connected with our third eyes, and we're all sat in this pattern. And some kind of geometrical shape has all linked our third eyes up, and.
So how old were you at this point, James?
This was 1982.
All right, so you were just a kid.
Yeah, still a kid.
Right.
And when they came through, these beings, it damaged the frontal lobes of our brains. Or it give us almost a type of frontal lobe lobotomy. And seriously damaged us.
So do you think this was part of your mind control programming or not? It was just
I think they were using our abilities to open this gate up, bring these beings through.
Right, all right, I'm with you now.
Because I think they need specific people to do it.
With certain genetics?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. All right. So in terms of the actual killings then, I mean, how do you reconcile that? How do you feel about that? I mean, do you not feel like going to the police and just saying, look, I'm being used to kill these people, can you please investigate it?
The police can't do anything about it. We've had dealings with the police, and anything to do with the police, it just gets covered up.
Have you tried to research any of the people that you've supposedly killed?
I've tried, but nothing's come up.
Right, so you've not managed to find any?
No, I mean, I know the names of one or two of them.
Right, okay.
But that guy was an MI6 agent in London.
Right.
In South London, high-ranking MI6. He used to be my handler.
Right.
He goes by the name of Dixon Ramey.
Right.
Which is not his real name.
Right, okay. You're saying all this to me now, which is going to go on television. How can you do that if, MI6 or whoever's running this program, surely they would not be happy at you giving this information that you've been murdering these people? Surely the whole idea is that it's covert, so why would you say this all in this interview?
There's certain factions that want me to talk about this.
Right.
They've got
Why would they want you to talk about it, those factions, then?
Because they want this information to come out.
Right. Is that because they don't agree with what's happening, or
there's so many different agendas. And when I say they, is
And these different fighting factions and agendas, are they all within the intelligence services then? within the NSA, MI6, MI5.
And there's a lot of special forces involved, SAS, Delta Force.
So they're like this closed-off group that are above the law, effectively.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've got kind of diplomatic immunity.
Right.
Like I can't be arrested.
Right. All right. Well, there's one easy way of proving that. I mean, see, it's difficult to. What would you say to the skeptic who says, "Well, you know, you just come out with this to seem macho"? I mean, what would you say to someone who says that?
I don't know.
Right. it just. I mean,
I'm just saying what's going on, really.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I suppose it is macho. This is the culture I move in. It's a warrior culture.
Right.
Yeah.
So you think? I mean, you know, you said it was possibly terrorists who you'd murdered. I don't know if you know any of my views that the Al Qaeda thing's a bit of a scam, really, and it's actually the intelligence agencies that are doing a lot of these false flag things, and they're doing it to spread fear, and they're doing it because there needs to be a perceived enemy. So when you say terrorists, do you mean, what sort of terrorists do you mean, or were you given any information on these terrorists?
Well, I suppose, you know, like they say, one man's terrorist, another man's freedom fighter.
Yeah, yeah.
It's all, again, I can only talk and operate in life under the mindset that I function with.
Right.
And that, for me, it's survival dynamics.
Right.
And a survival dynamic is you want yourself to survive, you want your family to survive, and then you want the groups, the organisations you're involved with to survive. You want your race to survive. But if a person is going against those survival dynamics, if a person is abusing children, they're going against the survival dynamics of our race. So they're a terrorist.
Right.
For instance.
So the group that's controlling you, they must have an agenda, and all these people that you've killed, there must be some commonality between their enemy, presumably. This is who you've been killing. So have you gathered anything on what the agenda is and what the group is that's controlling you? What's their, you know, if they're not working for the government,
it's not so much a case anymore of this group controlling me. We're all working together, we're all in it together.
Right.
We're all planning things together. And this is what we want to come out. This is what we want to come out.
Right. But what are you planning together? I mean, what is the...
we want you guys to survive.
Right. So, but how does murdering certain people make that happen? I mean, specifically, you don't know specifically why you had to terminate these people. I mean, you said you've been told you've done over 100.
Over 200.
Over 200.
Yeah.
In the UK or
all over the world?
All over the world.
Yeah.
So you've flown places. And
yeah.
Then, right.
This guy, Dixon Raymond, this MI6 guy in 2007, that was, we interrogated him. Before that, we interrogated him and a woman.
Right. A
woman who was staying with him. She was a prostitute working for MI6. And we didn't hurt her. We interrogated her. We interrogated him. We were looking for location of what is the NSA codename Pearls.
Mm-hmm.
And the NSA codename Pearls is a suitcase nuclear weapon.
Right.
Now, he had stolen a suitcase nuclear weapon, a Pearl, and we wanted to know where it was.
Right.
And we found out it was on a certain boat, and it was retrieved.
Right.
And but that was on file, a suitcase nuclear weapon.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually, it wasn't a suitcase nuclear weapon. It was actually a nuclear device that powers a craft, an off-planet craft.
Right. Okay. So it was alien-derived technology then?
Yeah, it was part of the United Nations Space Command.
Right.
It was technology connected to this group.
Okay.
And so this could, I don't know the full operation of what happened at the highest level,
mm-hmm.
but for instance, by doing that, we're protecting you guys, because that could have stopped something really bad happening with extraterrestrials coming in.
So, I mean, if we come on to that, you obviously believe extraterrestrials are real and they're part of all of this political game that you're involved with. So, where do they fit into this? What's their agenda, and are our military in collaboration with them? And where do they fit into this picture of what's happened to you?
Well, I mean, that's such a huge question. I suppose it's best if I talk about my personal experiences with them. For instance, on the island in Penang in the early 80s, that was the first remote viewing operation I was involved in as a child. They were testing my remote viewing abilities, and again, it was these beings who the NSA were working with at the time, these wolf-type beings like Bigfoots. Now, I think they're from Sirius.
Right.
Those particular beings, highly intelligent.
Right.
Now, what they were doing, there was some kind of military conflict going on in the area at that time in Penang. I think there was some fight between the SAS on the border there and another group. I'd have to research the history of it, but anyway, these particular beings had come in, and as soldiers were killing each other, they were involved in some kind of recording brainwaves. They were learning about human behaviour, and they were deriving some kind of almost sexual pleasure from the energy of the soldiers killing each other on the border. They were kind of feeding off it. So they had come into the area to learn about the human emotions.
And what about the grey alien that we hear about a lot with abductees? You know, what do you have any information on that?
The greys?
Yeah.
Well, I know they're connected to the reptilians. There's a heavy reptilian involvement here. I mean, this goes so high level, it's so big that, I mean, you talk about evidence. We've got video footage at a crash retrieval site in Chichester in 2008. There's reptilians on the video footage. Right,
and you've got that.
We've got that. Yeah.
Right. So have you put that out at all?
That's been released on the internet.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And would we be able to show that on this show for people to look at?
I mean, the reptilians there. They're over 7 feet tall.
So this was a crash retrieval in Chichester?
Chichester.
And
2008.
2008. And you were involved in the retrieval of this craft?
Yeah.
So how was it brought down? What was the...
It was shot down by the military.
Right. By UK military or...?
There was a big SAS involvement in that.
So
on that particular night.
So how did video footage come out then?
That was filmed by a friend of ours in the SAS. He used a long-range video camera. It's at a place called Goodwood Hill in Chichester.
Goodwood Hill.
Goodwood Hill.
Right.
Goodwood Airfield. It's next to Goodwood Airfield.
Right.
Now, it's a series of hills. This particular guy had a very long-range telescope, very powerful telescope. He was situated on one of the other hills. Now, he filmed it from about a mile away, I think.
Right. So was there any anything in the media about this case as a UFO thing?
The media is controlled by intelligence services. They wouldn't let that go into the media.
Okay. And do you know what the actual date was of this? You said 2008.
2008 in Chichester. There's somebody here who I think you've met. Who was at the crash retrieval.
All right.
He was the one who released it on the internet. He would have the date of it.
You don't want to name him?
Not on camera,
right?
Because it's for him to speak to you.
Right. All right. I just want to mention one thing. We did ask you about whether you've got any scars.
Yeah.
And just tell us what you said about that, because you said that you'd been cut open.
Yeah, there was the technology they used was some kind of advanced lasers that don't leave scars.
Okay, and we were also asking about the metal in your body.
Yeah.
Have you had any what happens when you go through airport scanners?
They don't go off because this metal is not detected with normal metal scanners.
Right.
I've had X-rays in the past, but they don't at hospitals, but they don't show me them.
Right. And what about, you haven't had an MRI scan before?
No.
Right. All right.
Okay. I'd be prepared to do that, but
Right.
I doubt very much that anybody would let anybody see all this technology.
Right. Okay. So is there anything you want to add?
The information speaks for itself, Richard. My life has just been a series of military training, assassinations and things like crash retrievals.
Right. So just finally, the factions that are fighting, surely there must be a faction that doesn't want the likes of you coming out with this fact, this claim that you've been through all this.
Well, of course. I mean, they've tried.
Why aren't they?
They've tried to kill me. They've
Right.
tried to hurt everybody close to me. But the fact of the matter is, I'm quite hard to kill.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, we'll leave it there, James. And
Okay.
thank you very much indeed for being interviewed.
Okay.
And I'm sure it's going to generate a vast amount of debate amongst the viewers of this show. So
Okay.
thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. It's been a pleasure.
Right. Welcome on board the Rich Planet Starship, broadcasting from somewhere high above the Earth. I'm Richard D. Hall. On today's show, I will be featuring an interview recorded in March 2011 with another alleged mind control victim, James Casbolt. But before that, have you filled in your census form? Are you feeling a tiny bit guilty because you haven't completed it yet? Well, one person who hasn't filled in his census form is Ben Emlyn Jones. We caught up with him in Lytham St Anne's to witness his protest and his uncanny management of the government's questionnaire. So what's the reason why you're doing this, Ben?
Because the census is an act of Big Brother imposition on the people of this country. They say you've got to answer these questions and they threaten you if you don't, if you say no. I mean, and they threaten you with a £1,000 fine, and it's all run by an American arms contractor called Lockheed Martin.
Really?
And they're awful. Okay. Hospital Porters Pride and Dignity, stop the New World Order. Welcome to Panwo TV. I'm at the Probe Conference at St Anne's in Lancashire, and you're about to witness a ceremony of desecration. Bring forth the defiler. Is this the defiler? The sentence of this court.
Let's get rid of it.
That's like you be burned at the stake until you are dead.
Yay! Yay! Boom!
Burn! 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 Oh, come on.
The scourge.
Burn! Burn!
We're not gonna have a look.
Hang on.
Right.
Funny, I was a
I'm gonna
smoker.
turn it inside as well. Yeah.
Sorry about the delay, ladies and gentlemen.
What's it going?
Yes,
There
that's it.
There we are.
Burn! 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 Burn!
Burn!
This one's going to go viral.
Yay! Back to hell.
Where you belong.
Return these ashes to the census office. This is not my form, this is our Stain and Chris's form. We're going to return them to the census form. Yeah.
What, you're going to return it as ashes?
We are. When these ashes are cooled down, we've saved the envelope. We're going to put them in and we're going to send them back.
With a nice message.
What do you say to people who think that you're just a bit mad for doing this, Ben? What's your answer to that?
I think you're mad actually if you feel this. If people are coming to you and asking you questions,
Yeah.
for no other reason than they want to ask you questions. And if you provide false information, they tell you you're providing false information when they are the ones asking you the questions. I think that's crazy, because you can say to them, well, if you think you know better and you think you know more about my life than I do, then why don't you fill the form in for me? So I mean, the whole thing about it is mad. It's all crazy. Well, we just told them we had a little accident. We were trying to light our cigarette and the census form caught light. Oh, ow, ow. We were a bit cold.
It's a senseless form now.
A senseless form, yeah.
Do they not need this information in order to set policies and stuff like that, Ben?
Well, the thing is, though, whenever they want to set policies and stuff, they just do other surveys, which leads me to suspect there's another reason for this census form, which they're not telling us.
Right.
Especially when people like Lockheed Martin are involved. I mean, the government say, well, your data is safe with us. However, they've left submarine blueprints in laptops in cars, and they left social security details down the back of the journal. Has said she's advocating breaking the law and not filling out your census form. Millions of people are going to default. The jails are full, the courts are full. Don't be scared. Don't let them frighten you. Okay? So we're now going to return this to whence it came. Thank you for watching Panwo TV. Hospital Porters Presidency stopped the New World Order.
Right, last night we witnessed the satanic ritual of Ben burning his census form, and we've just found this poster, which is reminding you it's time to fill it in, Ben.
Oh, fill it in. Fire is wasted on witches, you know. It's best for the census form, but this is unbelievable. Just listen to this. Complete your census online or drop it in the post today to avoid a fine. Well, as we've already discussed, it's very unlikely anyone will get prosecuted for defaulting on their census at all. However, just look at this. Listen to this. Help tomorrow take shape. Oh my goodness. Has anyone got a sick bag?
Okay. Thanks for that, Ben.
All right, that's enough of scene publications for one day.
All right. Ben Emlyn Jones there, and you can read Ben's blog, The Hospital Porters Against the New World Order, at hapanwo.blogspot.com. And there's a nice picture of Ben in his hospital porters.
Chairs in trains. What we're going to do with these ashes now, are they cool enough? Any ashes that we can revive, we're just going to, we have the envelope, we're just going to return these ashes to the people they came from.
Not much left of it now.
There's enough, yeah, there's barely an envelope full, but I think there's enough to sort of like be going on with. There's enough to sort of satisfy the census people, I think. You know, we are actually returning a form in
a slightly different state.
Slightly more carbon and oxygen probably than it arrived in, but now we're going to. I'm not going to lick the envelope because they can take your DNA from that. I'll just fold
I think they'll be able to find who you are, Ben.
Well,
you're going to put it on your channel, aren't you?
Well, but I mean, the thing about this, ladies and gentlemen, Sue, let me speak to people. Let me speak to the people.
Get them on hip.
They
I'll stand here as well.
can't prosecute you. They say they can prosecute you, but they're not. There's last time over 1 million defaulters, and there were 38 prosecutions. I'd be very surprised if there will be a single prosecution this time, because it'll be like the poll tax 20 years ago. You know, they're all full of bravado. We can send you to jail, we can threaten you with Greek buggery and all this sort of thing. And when it actually comes to it, they can't prosecute people. There's a backlog of poll tax defaulters that's going to go back 150 years. And this is going to be the same again, because more people are defaulting this time. Janet Street Porter, this woman who writes in the Daily Mail, which is hardly a revolutionary